Everybody, we are at 24th, 2026. That's right, 2,120 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, because he was a whistleblower and they targeted him. They took him downstairs to the basement room. It was a soundproof room, the arms room, right there in his building, in his barracks. And they took his life and then they stole his body. The evidence indicates there was organ harvesting. They trafficked his body to Juarez, Mexico for disposal. And a big cover up, y'all. A big cover up because it's infiltrated cartel in our military on Fort Bliss. This is what this confirms. And so, so much to talk about today. Really, hold on to your seats because this is this is a ride that's uh, like no other ride, right? This will make your stomach jerk, your heart pound, and you'll want to scream. You'll want to scream. It's unlike any roller coaster ride you've ever been on. So hold on to your seats because it is really uh, uh, everything is coming together, right? Everything is coming together. Um, and so let's get started. Let me make sure that I'm on. So the last couple days have been jaw dropping, just like the last 6 years. And if you were our family being behind the scenes and all of our filings, and the responses and um, the targeting, the attacks that we have gotten, you would even be in more disbelief of the level of corruption, cartel, infiltration, and all this time we've been trying to put the pieces together, who's who. And of course, we have come up with the name the El Paso Cartel. We've coined that, the El Paso Cartel operative Alejandra de la Vega Foster, the wife of Paul Foster. And of course, really in alliance with Woody Hunt and Josh Hunt. That is, all connected to the Beto O'Rourke, to Zorro Ranch, to Santa Fe, to Obama's, to um, Oprah, uh, down into Chihuahua, where the Mormon faction continues into Chihuahua, established in the Mormon faction colonies there. They've been there for a long time, and because they want to be polygamous, and they are there in Chihuahua. They've been there a long time. They're dual citizens. They're very connected to this because the Mormon faction join the military. They become CIA agents. They become FBI agents. They become DEA agents. They become ATF agents. And they work that border and they're at that border. And that's why the El Paso FBI uh, um, office and even the San Antonio office, the Austin office, it's very interesting when you look at who is leading them, because they are part of this Mormon faction. It is really infiltrated with, of course, Connell Wetton. Connell Wetton, the Wetton family is right there with the Romneys, right? Right there with Mitt Romney's family. Um, that are from the colonies there in Chihuahua, Mexico. Chihuahua, Mexico is the state that borders Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. Does it go all the way to California? I have to look at the map, make sure that I know I really focus on the Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas border. And I will look at the map. You should always have a map in front of you um, when it comes to doing this. And every time that I don't, I'm like, where's my map? Where's the map? Because it puts everything in perspective of where these people concentrate, the flow of uh, the different pipelines of trafficking, and going down um, through Central America, uh, and of course crossing over to Cuba and Haiti. Of course, the Haiti children, right? The Haiti children, we know all about that. They were right there and they were exploited, absolutely exploited. And then Dominican Republic with all the visas and everything. And then Puerto Rico right there where uh, the island is, right? Jeffrey Epstein Island. So you have it right above White Sands Missile Range, Zorro Ranch with Beto O'Rourke's family ranch, right beside that, right by Santa Fe, New Mexico, right above the restricted airspace of White Sands Missile Range. And then you have at the central part of the pipeline, because it's not the end of the pipeline, is Puerto Rico with Little St. James. And the larger St. James, a lot of CBP uh, compromised, just to bring in all the human trafficking and all the drug trafficking, the weapons. This is Iran Contra, like on steroids. This is Iran Contra on steroids, weapons, ammunition, parts, for drugs, for human trafficking, for and then all the money laundering. And this is what Jeffrey Epstein was so good at. Why they liked him is because he knew how to money launder. Okay, he was the financier for Khashoggi and um, the Iran Contra 1.0, and now he was, bought the ranch, and I think it was 1991 or 1993 he bought that ranch, and he's been operating ever since this border with all of this trafficking, and if you're making all that kind of money, you want a way of money laundering it. And so this border became so corrupt, so infiltrated, um, with compromised individual groups, with the cartels. Right? They needed the cartels, um, and they themselves became a cartel, and that's why I say El Paso cartel. They themselves became a cartel, and uh, then made an alliance because of the organ harvesting, the more sophisticated trafficking and money laundering. You can't get any more sophisticated, I guess, than the fuel and the um, organ harvesting, and of course the babies, because you can put that right into the health system, and if you have someone to falsify documents like we know that they were doing. Delia Briones is one of the most evil people in all of this, and no one understands how a county clerk can be so evil in all of this. But you have to have those documents, the falsified death certificates, the falsified birth certificates, to carry on this type of evil organ harvesting and baby harvesting, and the black market sale of babies, right? And the black market sale of organs. Um, and then, of course, into the whole medical system, and that's why they were focused, um, especially Beto O'Rourke with his campaign, focused on the health system. And we know that, that all needs to be investigated because it stinks to high heaven. When you have all these migrants saying, "Oh yeah, they took one of my kidneys so I can get into the country," um, just crazy, crazy stuff. But corneas are a big part of that, and um, yeah. So and try to explain every day the situation, the environment at the border, and the money that was being made, and the arrogance that came from that money. And that describes Maru Campos, right? The arrogance that she could even think that she could act like the president of Mexico and make these treasonous treaties with Texas Governor Abbott, who, is known for taking the planes from the plane trips, using their planes, which is, huge, huge when you have access to private planes and you don't have to pay anything because they cost a lot of money for these private plane trips, right? And of course, the El Paso cartel has those planes. And we know that Governor Abbott took those planes. We know that he signed because the signature is right there with the photo ops of many agreements, but the photo op of the signing of the treasonous treaty. They want to call it a memorandum of understanding, but it's not a memorandum of understanding, y'all. It is a treaty. And if you read it, you know that that is just one of those hypnosis things that the media wants to do to you. So your eyes go wiggly woggly both ways and go, oh, it wasn't treason. No, it was treason. This is a treasonous treaty. They acted like they were federal, that like they had federal jurisdiction. But they don't. And the Texas governor is very powerful in his state, very, very powerful. But he can't make those type of border treaties. That is uh, just not not his jurisdiction. He needs to stay in his lane, right? Stay in his lane. But no, but what they did is not only did they sign and well facilitate, we know that Alejandro de la Vega facilitated that treasonous treaty signing. So uh, not only did they do this, get out of their lane, not stay with their state mandated um, power that they have, but that they went and tried to grab federal power, right? Federal power, um, border security power, but they were compromised. They knew that this treaty was in favor of the cartel. That's why Alejandra de la Vega facilitated it because she's the El Paso cartel in alliance with others. She's an operative in the El Paso cartel in alliance with the El Chapo Sinaloa cartel, in alliance with the CJNG very violent flesh peddlers cartel, in alliance with La Linea that are from Nova Casa Grandes, the very heavy Mormon colonia area, the colonies for the Mormon faction. And then, of course, they're in alliance with the Juarez cartel, the media part, the Osvaldo Rodriguez Barunda. Um, uh, so this was really the largest alliance of major cartel operations, um, and and so it compromised or when I look at the picture of the treasonous treaty signing, which I should bring up, Governor Abbott's face is not real happy. It's very strenuous. Let's see if I have it here. Did I post it up? I thought I did. Um, yeah, here it is. Let's put this up. But you can see, I don't know if I can get close enough, but you can see his face right there because our sources are so good, right? They're so good. They're so patriotic. And our sources tell, because look at Maru's face. And then if you really, and this doesn't do it justice, you have to bring it up online yourself and really zoom in. But this is a very unhappy face, okay? And during this signing, um, before it happened, there were calls to say, "What the hell are you doing? You're not allowed to do this. You can't do this." Okay? And part of this facilitating, besides this guy here, looking up all these people that were allowing it to happen and not saying anything. They were forever holding their peace for this kind of marriage going on, and it was a treasonous marriage. Uh, and it gave cartel access to Mexican and United States intelligence databases, but not just any. I mean, you're talking about major uh, computer access to federal files, to federal cases that name informants, that name whistleblowers, that name. That's why Connell Wenton um, leaked Richard's identity to the cartel because he had access and he was giving access. They wanted to give, "Oh, why are you bothering me to want to find out who these reports come to? Okay, I have to access and then I have to tell it to you and leak it to you. Why can't we just bypass that?" Well, this is this agreement here so that the cartel could themselves go in and access this database and find out um, who the whistleblowers are, what judges were on certain cases, what investigators were on certain cases, so that they could obstruct and do, then the violence comes, right? The violence, the intimidation, the retaliation, and in our son's case, the murder, and then to make it sophisticated, saying, okay, we want to murder this guy, but we also want to cash in on it. So, let's do it in a way where we can harvest the organs and get U.S. aid for an unidentified migrant, like funeral aid for it or something. They make it very sophisticated. Their crime, they make it more and more evil. They make it more and more evil, which breaks down the whole system. So this is why this is so treasonous, because it's not only betrayal, it is absolutely hurts both Mexico and the United States. And look what it led to. It led to CIA agents being on the payroll of Chihuahua. And we know FBI and ATF and who's all on the payroll of Chihuahua, right? And who is funding this platform, this intelligence platform in Mexico, and compromising many of United States. So the comments, they'll say, "Oh, it's the USA, it's the CIA," but who are the CIA? Are they working for the United States? Because I can tell you right now that those two CIA agents were on the Chihuahuan payroll. They were wearing Chihuahuan, uniforms, right? They were, uh, uh, and I can't even say, I mean, clearly they weren't working for the benefit of Mexico, and they weren't working for the benefit of the United States. They were exploiting the United States and they were exploiting Mexico. And they were working for this cartel pipeline, this fentanyl trafficking, the human trafficking, and clearly they were protecting that and infiltrating our systems and our government. And that's what makes the dominoes just continue to fall. And that's why so many missing people. That's why so many children, 500,000 children, were able to be trafficked across that border and through Fort Bliss. Right? Do you think the American people want our bases to be used as a trafficking hub of children, and pay for it? The American people don't want that, and you can tell because of what is happening right now with the votes, that even with all of the propaganda and targeting of President Trump, and today uh, breaking news, the attempt on his life again, the shots into the White House. Let's just shoot into the White House while President Trump is dropping peace bombs, right? Peace bombs, and of course, the shooter was killed. I don't know if everyone knows that breaking news, but it's huge news because it just tells you how volatile this whole thing is, because there's not clear delineations of allies, right? We have the rhinos in the United States that are mad as hell at President Trump. I mean, they are mad as hell at President Trump for backing Paxton, right? By backing Ken Paxton over John Cornyn, because John Cornyn is a Alejandro de la Vega ally, is a Hunt family ally, is a Foster ally. He's in alliance with the El Paso cartel, you know, and so that's why this is. And you see Ted Cruz, who, oh my gosh, Ted Cruz is he was sitting since 2022 on Judge Rodriguez's absolutely bomb of a whistleblower complaint that identified the prime suspects in the murder of our son, identified that the CID on Fort Bliss was leaking and tampering with Richard's files. Um, you know, so and Ted Cruz Senator Ted Cruz just sat on that. And he's the one that right now is flapping his lips. He dares to flap his lips like, not like, in the defense of Senator Cornyn. It's just so telling. It tells you where their true loyalties are. And it's not with the United States and it's not with Mexico, right? And so that leads to another story where we have a senator, a Morena senator, that is, a pro Maru Campos, a pro Maru Campos. Yeah. So, so the breaking news today is that um, because of the disaster of yesterday, I believe, maybe not, maybe it was in the plans, but the disaster yesterday was so big. And if you didn't see that, Maru Campos, the El Chapo fentanyl governor, tried to cover up her treasonous treaty and the consequences of that treasonous treaty, ending up in the deaths of 2 CIA agents that were on her payroll. Okay, um, and she, her media, of course, she's paid millions out to the media for favorable media coverage, or just not to hit her hard, right? Not to hit her hard. And so she went on this media rounds, and it was a total disaster. Legally, it was say hello to over 40 years of prison, and maybe worse than that. Okay. And I'll show you that little tidbit. Um, I have it here. Yeah. Let's play it because I think it's so important.
It's better not to talk. I'm better not to talk. Because when Maru Campos was speaking, she got into trouble, and I think her team was signaling her to be quiet, and Maru Campos decided to stop the orista with Joaquin Lopez Doriga. Look at the video.
I mean, there was collaboration and presence of U.S. agents, except for the CIA, except of Chihuahua.
That's right. And that is now duly documented, argued, and supported. What? But law? And no law has been violated in the process.
I ask you, as governor, you cannot make agreements with federal agencies in the United States. It has to be the federal government, right? And the federal government was aware that these agents were operating there?
Sir, we were not operating. They were a matter of cooperation. Let me give you an example. A perpetrator of violence who, according to the United States, had just gone to Chihuahua or was in such and such a federal entity, and I needed help in arrest him in order to extradite him to the United States. We were doing collaborative referral between perhaps 2 states or just the state of Chihuahua. That agency would look for the perpetrator of violence and he would go to the United States.
Agents from that agency, personnel from the agency that requested it participated in that operation?
Yes, yes. In other words, they participated, right? Well, those who were supposed to be at that time catching or detaining that perpetrator of violence, who in that case was Mexican, participated. It
could be the DEA or the FBI.
Could be the DEA or the FBI. It doesn't help if you move like that because I can't see a thing.
Thank you.
Oh, good. No, but no one is covering you.
They're making a lot of signs over there, and so I don't understand what's happening.
Good.
Who's the third base manager here?
No one.
Hey, well, this collaboration exists, but that collaboration was duly supported at the time by the request of the United States.
Well, there it is, friends. Imagine.
Okay, so that was so damaging to her, and of course there's others. One was worse than the other when it came to her media tour and her interviews. She could not cover up. Matter of fact, she confesses to the treason that she has committed. And not only that, she really lies. You know, she talks about the extradition of perpetrators. Well, you have to have, extradition falls under federal jurisdiction. You have to have someone in the federal government that knows what you're doing to issue extradition orders. And really, it tells you what was going on with El Mayo. El Mayo had no extradition orders. He was flown out, kidnapped, and flown out, tricked, right? Betrayed, tricked, kidnapped, bag over his head and everything, and flown to where? El Paso, and Connell Wenton Conowetton's FBI is the one that arrested him. They were waiting on the tarmac for that plane. They knew that plane was coming in, even though that plane had the tail number tampered with, the logbooks tampered with, that the pilot didn't even have a license. The pilot's license was expired, you know. So and everyone's like, but well, wait a minute, El Mayo, he is a Sinaloa major cartel kingpin. He needs to be arrested. But it wasn't according to the way it's supposed to be, because Maru Campos was, just running like she was the president, federal president, federal jurisdiction, um, governor, and she wasn't. She's the governor. She only has state jurisdiction. And so she was violating the whole country of Mexico's sovereignty, the whole um, constitution of Mexico is just so bad. You just can't have these rogue operations, right? And these rogue operations get people killed. And I know you can say, um, well, what it does is it confuses everything, because people will say, "Oh, Mexico did that." Well, Mexico didn't do that. It was Maru Campos that did that. You see, and people will say, "Oh, the United States did this," but it wasn't the United States. The United States didn't sanction this. The United States didn't sanction what Governor Abbott did. And then all the consequences that came from it, they'll blame, the world will blame, or people, even uh, their very own people will blame the country and the leadership, when the leadership didn't have anything to do with it. It was rogue operations, unauthorized operations. And through this whole thing, um, that's what we saw. We knew that there were, you call it mutiny, right? That's what you call it. You call it mutiny. You call these rogue, unauthorized operations, what they did with Richard, what they did with the Walmart mass shooting, what they did with the whole surveillance system. And then that involves all this money, all of this money from fentanyl and cocaine and all of that, and the human trafficking and all the guns and all of that has to be laundered. And they launder it, and that system has to be protected, and they do it through surveillance, and then they do it with armed cartels. That's why they're called a terroristic organization. So, and it was just, I mean, it's still there, right? It's still there. So today there was a subpoena, because of that disaster, where she's admitting to it. How can President Scheinbaum be the president of Mexico when you watch a disaster like that on TV and the president doesn't do anything about it? Mexicans can say goodbye to Mexico if Scheinbaum wouldn't do anything. They could just say goodbye to Mexico and change the name to Mexico to Marlanda, right? To Marlanda. We live in Marlanda, not in Mexico, because that is what Maru was doing. Like she was Marlanda. And this is why, whether you are PAN or PRI or Morena or whatever, if you want to be Mexico, you have to decide, do you want to be Marlanda or do you want to be Mexico? If you want to be Mexico, you must side with the president of Mexico, the federal jurisdiction, to say we need to subpoena her and we need to try her for treason. because that's what she did. And, people will say, oh, you need to say allege or whatever. Look, what do you need? She's on TV and all of our evidence. I can absolutely say that anybody trying to sabotage or delay or block a trial, be it in the courts or be it in the Senate, the Mexican Senate can try Maru Campos for treason, and they should. And there shouldn't be one bit of problem with that. And so today was a huge step in that direction because Maru Campos was handed a subpoena. So she has to go now um, to testify, and she could absolutely be arrested. So let's I want to go back to that to make sure there is a problem in the Senate. There is a Mexican version of a rhino. And I wanted to talk about him. His name is Senator Ricardo Monreal. Monreal. I hope I'm saying that right. Monreal. And of course, it gets late, and it's just hard. But I hope I'm doing it justice. Senator Monreal. He is very powerful, y'all. He's very powerful. He's been there for a long time. Okay, he has a lot of influence, and so he is Morena. He's a Morena party. Yet he is cheerleading, or I don't know, cheerleading. He is siding with Maru Campos, trying to delay, trying to hold up the Senate trial of Maru Campos for treason. And getting to the bottom of what was going on with this treasonous treaty and with the CIA agents, John Black, former Marine, and Richard Johnston, the drone operator, seeing why they were on Maru's payroll, the Chihuahuan payroll, right? And Senator Monreal, being Morena, right, is slow walking and blocking. And so it's like, why is he doing that? Why is he being like a Ted Cruz? He is absolutely being like a Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz had Judge Roger Rodriguez's jaw-dropping major whistleblower report on his desk in his hands that identified the prime suspects of who took our son's life, a U.S. Army soldier, and he just sat on it. He didn't want it to go forward. He did write us a letter. He had to write us a letter, right? But that was like his little token. And now we have another Senator Ted Cruz, a Senator Ricardo Monreal. And he's just going to play games. It's tougher because Maru Campos did such a disastrous job on live TV, that how is he going to recover from that, right? How is he going to make excuses? But they're politicians, they'll find a way. But he absolutely is trying to slow walk the trial of Maru Campos. And so the question is why? And we found out why. Okay, we found out why. We have reported, and this we've already posted about it, that Maru Campos has a very close, intimate relationship with a federal judge, Juan Carlos Zamora. Okay. Juan Carlos Zamora. So that, is really handy for her because, you always want to have a very close, good friend as a federal judge, right? You want to have that because that you can ask for a lot of favors. But they also want some favors if you're the El Chapo fentanyl governor, right? And uh, I I think, I don't know if it was a favor, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Zamora's father, who's right here, Zamora's father, oh, I don't have the thing on. Okay, so I'm here now. Sorry. So here they are, right? This is the very close friends indeed. Um, and here's the federal judge, and his name is Juan Carlos Zamora, and Juan Carlos has a father, and this father here is on the very security commission of Maru. Yes, the security commission that Alejandro de la Vega was on, right? It seems like is that the same one? Is that the same one? I mean, how many security commissions can you have? But it also is tied to this whole Torah Centella platforma, right? This whole 1.27 billion surveillance, intelligence database network along the border. That includes the big 20-story tower that points right at Fort Bliss. And I have some pictures someone sent me. I can put that on where you can see it from Fort Bliss, this big tower looking right at you, or right in El Paso, right? Um, and with a helipad on the top of it, and the 18th floor being dedicated to office space. So Maru Campos was giving office space to the CIA in Juarez, Mexico, right there across the street from the bull ring, right? Right on the border, y'all. Right on, directly on the border, right across the street from the bull ring. So the 18th floor was for CIA and FBI and ATF and DEA and CBP, Customs and Border Protectors. So they absolutely had, and then we find out that these two CIA agents that were killed were on Maru Campos's payroll. So how many were on the payroll, right? But I digress and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to talk about Zamora's father, who was on that security team that even was part of this whole treasonous treaty facilitating this whole treasonous treaty, right? And absolutely knowing that it was illegal, that it was unlawful, that it was not the right thing to do. And so Zamora's father has close ties to this senator, political ties with Senator Monreal. Okay, so this is like, if you're really close to Maru, right? And you serve on Maru's Security Commission, and your political buddy is Senator Monreal. When Maru Campos gets a subpoena and is looking at being tried for treason, which I think is going to happen. It looks like it's going to happen. But she has someone here to, help her avoid it, to try to protect her. And that is, we don't we don't like that because we have to deal with the likes of Ted Cruz. We have to deal with the likes of Greg Abbott. We have to deal with the likes of Veronica Escobar and Beto O'Rourke. This is both sides of the border, right? I mean, both sides of the political spectrum that we have to deal with that are are where are their true loyalties? Is it to the United States? Is it to Mexico? Or is it to the El Paso cartel and their alliances with the other cartels? It seems like they like that fentanyl money. They like that cocaine money. They like that human trafficking money and the organ harvesting money. They like that money. And because their actions absolutely, um, declare to us that they are in alliance with the El Paso cartel. And of course, in Mexico, um, eh, you know, Senator Monreal's reaction to what's going on with Maru Campos is strange until you know the conflicts of interest. And then you're like, oh, this is a protection racket. Oh, this is a protection racket. Now I get it. Now I get it. And then you can see clearly and you can write him and say, hell with your protection racket. I want Mexico. I don't want Marulandia, right? I want Mexico. And so this is what's really going on here. I hope I explained it good. More information is coming in all the time. But this is clearly why we've got this holdout, right? We've got this holdout. And you see in the United States, we have holdouts. They even left the Senate. They don't even want to do their job because they are just like, oh, I gave $90 million to Cornyn and President Trump endorsed Ken Paxton. How dare him? How dare him waste my money? We need a protection racket. And that's what they want. They want places in the government not to serve. Okay. These double agents, they're not taking a place to serve either Mexico or the United States. They're in there to be a protection racket. And that has to stop, y'all. That has to stop. And, we absolutely, I'm just really praying for Mexico to have this trial of Maru Campos. Um, Not that, I mean, who am I, right? But Maru Campos absolutely interfered with our son's case. Interfered with our son's case. And if she interfered with our son's case, how many other cases did she interfere with? And also, she's totally responsible for the funeral, the transnational funeral fraud, flesh peddling, uh, sacrilegious, and absolutely gross plenitude crematorium. She's absolutely responsible for that. It's under her jurisdiction, and here she is, not even doing her own job, not even doing her own jurisdiction, wanting to be Marlandia and do federal treaties that she's not even allowed to do, right? That she's not. She hasn't been given that privilege yet, and she wants to overreach her power and grab power. And I think it's like a soft coup. I really do. It's like a soft coup what she was doing. So I hope that explains that. Let's see. I like to go through. Yeah, when I was reading about Senator Monreal, what he was doing down there, it just reminded me of Ted Cruz. And so I reposted this, just a little summary of what happened here, because Judge Rodriguez's whistleblower complaint landed on both Senator Cruz and Sean Bernabe's deaths. Sean Bernabe didn't even tell us, and neither did Ted Cruz. They didn't even tell us, and the level of betrayal, and what the consequences were for their actions, amounts to treason. Okay, amounts to treason, because the whole picture is what they were doing was really targeting President Trump. They were targeting President Trump because President Trump wanted to close the border, right? He wanted to close that border, and they were the kings of the border. They wanted their big El Paso cartel network to keep growing, and keep terrorizing the people. That's what they wanted. So they're really monsters. They really are monsters. And yeah, so I had to put that up. This is President Trump's major peace bomb that he broke. I think it was like shortly before, maybe shortly after, maybe shortly during, that the White House was being shot up today. Just crazy stuff going on. But yeah, this was an amazing post, and I had to post it because it talks about all the different leaders that he um, is getting their opinion. He is absolutely amazing, getting the opinion of all these different countries that surround Iran, and not just listening to Lindsey Graham. He's another one. He's another one that is a traitor, but in our son's case, for sure. Um, from my knowledge, he didn't have the letter. Um, I don't know if Senator Cruz gave it to him. I don't know, but to see President Trump really doing diplomatic negotiations with the people that are right there beside Iran is it's amazing to see, because there's so much pressure to just go bomb, 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 right? Go bomb, 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 right? That's what so many people are so stupid. Um, they just want to reach for the bombs. And President Trump, uh, is really, he knows that Iran is a gateway to China. That Richard's first complaints were right there in the Strait of Hormuz in Qatar, and that he can't really say on TV that there was a problem in our military, an infiltration in our military. He's rebuilding and trying to clean up our military, right? Stop the trafficking within our military, the mutiny in our military. He was the target of it, so he absolutely knows that it's there. And of course, our son was a target of it, so we know it's there. But he's trying to preserve our country. It's just not something that you don't think about or you do overnight. You have to absolutely stabilize the economy, because when you have a trafficking economy, a criminal and organized crime economy, it totally is a national security risk. If you want to stop it, what will replace that illegal economy, that unlawful criminal terrorizing economy? You have to have something to replace it. Otherwise, it's going to be really bad news for your country in other aspects. And so to see President Scheinbaum now making a treaty, a trade treaty, a clean economic treaty. Now, is everything about it clean? I don't know. But I can call it a clean economic treaty because it was legitimately done. It was legitimately done between the EU and Mexico. So the EU and Mexico did this. Um, Mexico will now get access to that economy. And there was just a lot of details to that treaty that were very, very interesting. A lot of food, even like certain kind of cheeses, and it was just very interesting to keep that legitimate business going. It's not like for fentanyl or whatever, but there was some other resources mentioned in it. So, that could have only happened because President Trump has destroyed so many of these cartel leaders, hundreds of them, hundreds, and Maduro, and the whole Jeffrey Epstein pipeline, the fuel theft, the turning off the AUSA money, so if you don't have money, you then go, oh, wow, how can I make some money now? So by turning off the threat, like when people have a lot of money, these cartel people, they were shooting politicians in the head, y'all. It has been so violent, and you had I forget his name, and please God forgive me for that. But he was brave politician in Mexico, and the next thing you know, he was shot in the head, trying to call out the cartels, trying to stand up for Mexico, for Mexico's sovereignty, against the whole cartel infiltration. And so you had to get rid of the threat. That threat, and the Walmart mass shooting, I mean, yeah, no wonder people were shaking in their boots, because the crime was just out of control. And they had crooked judges that would take bribes to let them go, right? So it's there is no way, I don't see it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it, that President Scheinbaum could have that much courage and to have a legitimate trade deal with the EU without the help of President Trump first in this whole last year and a half, cleaning up the threat against her as the president of Mexico, and her authority and her legitimacy. And President Trump just made President Scheinbaum much more powerful, and rightfully so. She is the president of Mexico. And so it was really good to see that trade deal. And I hope that Mexico becomes very prosperous, and the people that have been targeted by the cartel become very prosperous. I mean, that's my hope for them all. And if they're prosperous, then that will also help the United States, right? And if the United States is prosperous, that will help Mexico. So, we just need to hope for the best for both of our countries. Um, and I hope, of course, for the EU, right? Also, um, so this is really a great sign and um, legitimate business through the Strait of Hormuz that absolutely um, has consequences to both Mexico and the United States. Thank you so much, Rick. Keep fighting for justice. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you, Laura, for coming on too, and all your prayers and your love. So this has been just an amazing day, and I can't forget to mention, um, you know, of course, David Scott Frost. Absolutely, absolutely, there is hard evidence that David Frost, was the lead FBI agent for the Walmart mass shooting investigation. Period. Period. That's it. And there's absolute evidence that simultaneously he was a senior NCO in the headquarters of 1AD under Sean Bernabe. Now, wow. Wow, that's so illegal. What is going on? And it really shows you, because of what we know about both cases, is that the Walmart mass shooting, we know it was orchestrated. We know the crime scene was tampered with. Not because I said so, not because I'm with AI, not because whatever. No, because evidence of 6 years of investigation has piled up and declares that that mass shooting was orchestrated, and the crime scene was, and even Ted Cruz could tell you, even Ted Cruz could tell you that the crime scene was tampered with. If Ted Cruz was even Jaime Esparza, who walked the crime scene before it was secured, even they can tell you that it was tampered with, right? That it was tampered with, that it was staged. And of course, JT, the Texas Ranger, lead in the Walmart mass shooting investigation, he also, um, well, he already confessed to that. So we know that. And because of that, and because of finding out that David Scott Frost was also living on Fort Bliss as a senior NCO. And we know that because his wife wanted a protective order against him for domestic violence. And 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 that paperwork absolutely declares that the show cause and all of the affidavits in there, and the whole case, their whole divorce and everything, reveals a lot of information, and it reveals that he was senior NCO right there living on Fort Bliss while, um, right there with Sean Bernabe. And as an FBI agent, he was reprimanded. Okay. That's also documented. So he was both. And so what that tells you is that the military was involved in the orchestration of the Walmart mass shooting. And if they were involved in the orchestration of the Walmart mass shooting, they were also engaged in the targeting and the taking of our son's life and the whole cover up, because the two are totally intertwined. And there you have it. That's jaw dropping. The question we have is, was he also on Chihuahuan payroll? Was he crossing the border and working with the Platforma, the Sentinel Platforma? Was he working with the CIA agents? Was he on the payroll? And was Michael Mayella, the brother-in-law of Patsy, of Patrick Crucius, the shooter of the Walmart mass shooting, and allegedly, we know there's there's multiple shooters. They're at large. They're right now being protected, but we know, the military was involved, right? That's why there's no forensics, because we know there's M4s there. We know that the ballistics would show that. And so Michael Mayella, being in the DA's office, being in the FBI, and he still is in the FBI office, and also working for Walmart cybersecurity at the same time, was he also on Chihuahua's payroll? I mean, he was on the DA's payroll. He was on the FBI's payroll. He's on Walmart cybersecurity payroll. Was he on Chihuahua's payroll? And, and we can go on and on. How many people were on Chihuahua's payroll? Well, that's why we need to have that trial of Maru Campos. Those questions need to be asked because Chihuahuan taxpayers need to know. So we put that up. And we also know, and this reminded us, and that General Kelly was on Chihuahua's payroll. Marine General John Kelly was on Chihuahua's payroll. He worked for Maru Campos as a security advisor, probably right along with Zamora's father. Probably, well, we know, with Alejandra de la Vega Foster. At least knowing her. So that is like information that is so, what do you call it? It's so important. I mean, it has to be shared. That's the whole point. It's so delicate. This is major intelligence information that, God has given us. And we're presenting it to you all. And we, really, the only thing we ask is for you to share this information, because the sharing of the information will drive them to have to address it. We'll have to recognize the assault on the sovereignty of our countries, because that was absolutely an assault on our countries. Make sure I talked about that. I think I covered everything for today. There's always so much information. I want to go here because I want to look at my beautiful son there. His birthday's coming up. What they did was so evil, and it was just an act of war, It was just so evil, and we can't let it go unaddressed. They need to be held accountable, and we need to get our son's remains. We know they have Richard's remains. There's other evidence. He was almost like a trophy for them. So, yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm not as late. It's almost 2, but try to get on a little bit earlier, but there's so much going on. And so I just appreciate everyone's patience. And please share. And we love you, and God bless you.